Morning, everybody. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. Today we've got Soren Holtman with Iowa Aquaponics. So let's give him a round of applause. And Soren, take it away.
First of all, I got to say I love the fact that we clap beforehand. It really does help with the nerves and get things going. I usually have to work a lot harder for a round of applause. As he mentioned, I am Soren Holtman. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Iowa Aquaponics today. Just a quick agenda there, what I'm going to cover in the presentation. All right, Iowa Aquaponics is a company that I founded in August of last year while I was at OEI. It's located in Cedar Falls, Iowa, currently operating upstairs out of the JPEC Student Business Incubator. First of all, show of hands, who knows what aquaponics even is? All right, more than I expected, actually. For those of you who don't know, in a nutshell, it's just using the waste from fish to fertilize your plants, which then in turn filter the water that the fish live in, symbiotic. Essentially, it's a pond ecosystem, but in a self-controlled environment. And why aquaponics? What's so good about aquaponics? Well, it's easy. It's absolutely the easiest way that's out there to go organic at this point. Essentially, you just control, if your fish food is organic, everything else in the system is organic because it's the only input into the system. It's also incredibly efficient in respect to water, or in regards to water especially. It's about 95% more efficient than traditional agricultural practices. And then the flexibility of it, because it's a self-contained unit, you can grow it anywhere. You know, you don't have to have great soil. You don't have to have, a perfect, unobstructed southern-facing view. All the things that traditional gardening requires are essentially thrown out the window with aquaponics. Company's mission is to enable the world to grow their own healthful food sustainably. Vision, to grow the company to the point where our products are in the marketplace and accessible to anyone that can benefit from them. And then the values that we're trying to build around are sustainability, health, respect, growth, and community. The problem. First of all, I don't know who buys organic, but if you do, I'm sure you can attest that it's extremely expensive, roughly twice the amount for organic produce as opposed to regular. There's also a very high demand for local and organic foods, a lot of the time which we can't satisfy due to different conditions. Also, food deserts. This is the United States. This isn't, Darfur or a third world country. These are places in the United States that people don't have reliable access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Even within the Cedar Valley itself, doesn't get much closer to home than that. We have 50,000 people that draw from emergency food assistance from food banks every year just in the Cedar Valley alone. Getting more into the sales and marketing side, I've identified segments up until this point. One, homesteaders. There's some of the demographic information. Two, preppers and survivalists. Because we can power the system through basically a solar array or windmill, anything like that. We see some potential with preppers, survivalists. You could literally have one of these systems in a bunker and then have a line ran out array, etc. So kind of excited about that potential as well. Market segment 3, full nesters. These are just families that are seeking more healthful, organic, secure food alternatives. They may not have a large enough yard, may not be able to afford healthful produce, may be located in a food desert, but there are any number of reasons. The difficulty in this particular market segment is that it's extremely diverse, so we're going to have to narrow that down a little further. 4, our heroes, servicemen and women, often have little access to fresh produce downrange. I'm a veteran, that's actually my family, my mom, grandpa, brother-in-law, and myself. So I can tell you from personal experience that downrange, we really don't get the fruits and vegetables that we need. We do oftentimes get fruits and vegetables, but it really is dependent upon where you're at. They're brought in from a long ways away. It's not safe that they're being brought in. That's an extra convoy that you have to take. These are people that are getting blown up every day just to bring you fresh fruits and vegetables. Healthier, that's kind of self-explanatory. And then therapeutic. There are a lot of organizations out there that are actually using different types of gardens to treat veterans with PTSD, etc. Why not start that while you're actually downrange as opposed to waiting until you get back? Then market segment 5 are humanitarian organizations. Basically, you're teaching someone how to fish as opposed to giving them the fish. We're building local food economies instead of disrupting them. It's much more cost effective instead of, continually shipping bags of rice, et cetera, over to these places. We could set them up with a kit that in theory can sustain them indefinitely. Less perceived outside influence. There are a lot of issues with trust issues as far as United Nations, as far as us. People don't necessarily want us to be involved. This could lessen that as well. And then a paradigm shift. What kind of culture wants to be dependent upon other people? You give them the power to produce their own food, and I really think that we can make some positive good. As far as the competition, these are the people that we're really up against right now, providing these kit-based systems. This is Endless Food Systems. As you can see, a pretty basic kit, and it's coming in at $2,000 and up, depending on options. Aquaponics store, another very similar basic kit. That one runs you about $2,400. Nelson and Pade is kind of the industry leader at this point. Their systems are around $3,000 and up, way up, actually. It goes from there. So as you can see, really basic systems. I can reproduce these systems for a fraction of the cost, and honestly, I feel like I can make a much better system as well. And then other types of competition, there are do-it-yourself plans out there. People can easily reproduce their own kit. And then outside the United States, Australia in particular has a large aquaponics industry, so there's potential of them trying to come into our market as well. Competitive advantages that I feel my system has at this point. Differentiators, they're stackable, which I spent a lot of time trying to ensure, and the reason behind that is because specifically with the humanitarian organizations, we need to be able to ship a lot of them in a small space, as efficiently as possible. Eco-friendly, we're marketing to a green audience as well as all these other aquaponics companies, but none of them are made out of anything other than petroleum-based plastics. So I think that sourcing locally, eco-friendly plastic could really differentiate us from the competition. The flexibilities, as I mentioned, the price, I'm looking to come in at a price point that's roughly 20% of the competition. And then the aesthetics, some of the feedback I got from earlier presentations were that those systems were incredibly ugly, and I was looking more at the utility side of it, but since then we've incorporated some aesthetic elements as well, just outer paneling that can be changed, and just really emphasizing making it look good as well as perform good. And then our location, because we're in Iowa, we have the access to those raw materials for the corn plastics, and then we're centrally located, so logistically that helps out quite a bit. Also, as I mentioned before, plug the JPEG one more time, I've drastically reduced overhead as a result. I'm essentially getting a free roll at this. Arena's product categories, the main product is a base fish garden plug-and-play aquaponics system, but then we'll have all sorts of basically supporting products, replacement supplies, accessories, the power supplies for solar and wind that I already talked about, as well as potential ad revenues on the site. Distribution channels, trying to minimize overhead again, we're going to go with online ordering exclusively, at least in the beginning. That slide was supposed to be hidden, but this is how big of an industry it is right now. Pretty attractive growth rate, as you can see, and it's fueled by the shift towards healthful foods as well as the increased medical marijuana use. The system was definitely not designed for that use, but we've also got some feedback along that way that that's a market that it's exploding, so it's stupid not to, take advantage of that market as well. This is kind of what we're looking at right now. Contract manufacturer. Actually, in northwest Iowa, we're looking at a few other ones, but we're roughly around $100 in variable cost at this point, but with a $100,000 fixed cost, primarily the molds. We can cut that fixed cost down substantially, but that's kind of the worst case for our financial models, which gives us our break-even quantities there. Team, as of this point, it's just me. Business development officer, just because I can call myself whatever I want because it's my company. But we're looking at adding an intern here in the near future to help out with the public relations side of things. That's been the part that's just been the hardest for me to keep up with. Full-time student, single dad. Without making excuses, I need some help time-wise. And then consultants, trying to keep overhead down again. It's just, I've got access to great resources here, great consultants in pretty much every arena, so I'm taking full advantage of those. Status right now, we're definitely in discovery, kind of the staging and pacing going forward. Just completed my full business plan finally. That was nice. I can actually get that out to people and get feedback on that. Working on surveys right now to kind of narrow down those target markets and hopefully figure out which way to go initially. And then based on our results there, planning on rebranding and launching an online community to support aquaponics as well, and with a full launch in fall of 2015. Initially, we're looking at a fairly narrow scope, and then broadening from there. That's how we hope to scale. Any questions? Josh?
What kind of yields do you get off of the various systems? Do you have any anticipated goals for that?
Yield financially or for?
Well, food, yeah.
Produce. Well, kind of the benchmark is it takes about 5 by 5, so 25 square foot, to support completely one person. And that's not if you're trying to augment or supplement your food supply. That's for a complete food supply.
Really?
Yep.
Because it's not just the vegetables and stuff, it's
Right.
It's also the fish.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's actually that 25 square foot is based on just the produce side of it. There's no calculation made on the fish side of it. The initial response that I've got from a lot of people is that they're not okay with eating the fish. I personally don't share those sentiments, but I do understand. So we have based our numbers otherwise, but yeah, even less if you include the fish part of your diet as well.
What kind of fish?
You actually can use a wide variety of fish. Locally, I don't know if you guys have heard of Endless Harvest. Just north of Cedar Falls, they just started a commercial aquaponics setup. Their produce is available in Hy-Vee, but they do tilapia, which is the most common, and that's just because you can stock them really densely. The temperature range is about right, and it's a pretty high margin fish. But you can also use perch. I've seen systems with perch, walleye, different trout species. So depending on whether you're using a high density or low density stocking, you can essentially use any fish. Also a lot of ornamentals. People do koi and different goldfish and stuff like that as well.
How much would it cost to operate this system for a year?
Great question again. It depends on whether or not you're using, natural sunlight or artificial, obviously. But I do have break-even charts for both. I actually should probably put that in my slide as well. That could give you, more accurate estimates on that. But you definitely can make it cost effective even with supplemental light. You probably couldn't with just high intensity discharge, but now with LEDs you absolutely can.
Have you ever thought about teaming up with hatcheries or like DNR with stocking and different things?
Absolutely. We're looking at some different strategic partnerships. One would be more on the produce side with like a Seed Savers or someone where we can help facilitate their products that we support and buy into. But also, yeah, with hatcheries, we're looking at that. We haven't identified, one in particular to work with. That's still something that I obviously need to do. But yeah, it's definitely something that we'd like to do.
And is your market the commercial space or the residential space? And don't say both.
No, I understand. If you're here for the first part, we've talked about it a little bit, but essentially we're trying to go more the residential side as far as the bulk of our target markets,
Okay.
and then humanitarian organizations and military.
Oh, I
are two
saw
other-
that. Okay. So these guys that are north of town, whose product are they using?
Whose product, they built their own.
They did?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there better margin to be making the product or to be selling the fish?
The fish are the lowest margin, the produce are the high margin thing in the system, but my forecasted margins are better off the product themselves, but it was more about, I just felt like that was the gap in the marketplace that could best be addressed. When I was trying to put together my system in particular, I just saw these systems that I didn't think were that great and were exorbitantly priced, so I felt that was where the market pain was. Does that answer your question?
What do you mean system?
System, it's a plug-and-play system. No, it's a
Review.
Gotcha. It's a plug-and-play system called the Fish Garden that's scalable. You can connect multiple ones together, but you can also use just one in a residential application.
Is it similar to fodder systems from farm tech?
Similar.
When does this resident get a break even on buying a $2,000 home fish growery thing?
Well, that's the problem. It takes a long time in those
It's a long
systems,
time.
but in ours, we're coming in at about 25% of it. In the first year, you can definitely hit break even, but once again, it depends on whether or not you're using artificial lighting or not. You could hit, if you're not using artificial lighting, you could hit a break even the first month, but if you're using artificial lighting, it's going to be somewhere around the 1 year mark.
Even on those $2,000 systems?
No, on my system. On the $2,000 system, then that would be around the 1 year mark as well.
So then you use this water to water your garden.
I'm sorry?
So then you use this water to water your garden.
No, the garden, I guess I should have a picture of my kit as well. The bottom half is the water where the tanks actually live, and then the upper half is where the produce is. So it's all in one piece.
Earlier, you had a features and benefits slide that included several things that were competitive advantages plus price. Is there a reason why you're pricing so much lower than the competition? Have you thought about the margin you're potentially giving them?
I have thought about that, and the reason that we're able to do it, or potentially able to do it so much,
Well, I understand you can do it so much cheaper. Should you?
should I understand that, up until this point, we feel yes, and the reason being so is because we're trying to drive demand in this market as opposed to just capture the existing demand. I'm trying to spread this into homes, where it actually needs to be used as opposed to just making money off of it. So am I giving up some margin? Possibly, but it's to increase the pool of people that can actually afford the system.
Have you identified any manufacturers that work with, or is that part of your?
Yep, well, I've been talking, like I said, to one in Northwest Iowa. It's actually the first grain manufacturing plant in Iowa. I met someone at Okoboji Entrepreneurial Institute that's been helping out with that part, but I'm not dead set on that. That's just who we've been talking to at this point and crunching the numbers based off of.
So how are you creating these systems now, like your prototypes?
Prototype, I just have a system on my own that I've built. I'm not to prototype stage at this point,
Okay.
but the plan is for that. I've been working with Industrial Technology Center over there and doing a mini prototype on the 3D printer, and then hopefully contracting a scaled full version from there.
I think there's a company up in Decorah that does rotoplastic manufacturing.
Right. We have one in Waterloo. There's one in Iowa Falls. There's one you mentioned. We've got quite a few options locally.
I think they make beer coolers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Soil for this?
No, not at all. That's another thing that's awesome because there's no soil, there's no weeds, you're not pulling weeds. Most of your pests are actually soil borne as well, so that cuts that out, which is another reason why it's much easier.
And then do you filter the water before you put it in? Is there like a certain kind of water that you have to use so you're not bringing in?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're using just standard tap water, you have to dechlorinize it, or dechlorinate rather. But other than that, there aren't any particular. You just let your system essentially create its own equilibrium. The plants microbes, as they get going, filter the water, and then at a certain point, once your system's stabilized, then you would add the fish.
Can you go back to the pictures that you had?
Sure. Anyone in particular?
One that shows the plants on the thing.
I don't think I have a picture of that, but essentially this would be filled with a growing medium there, and then your plants would be in there. Mine essentially takes this and puts it on top of that, and that's for manufacturing purposes and then as well as space saving. I can,
So in this picture are the fish in the bin,
yes, the fish would be in the bin, and then the plants would be in the tray there.
and then they just pass the water back.
Yep, there's a pump that literally just pumps water from here and then it drains back into there. It's super simple. What I'm trying to do is make this all in, well, it's two pieces. Essentially this with a tray that slides right into there, and then it just makes it cheaper to manufacture, and then there are a lot less moving pieces.
So you could use tropical fish. You could essentially make that orange bin an aquarium.
Yep, absolutely. And there are,
Garden on top of it.
right, and I should say that it doesn't have to be this configuration. A lot of people do vertical gardening, which is really cool as well. So you essentially have a little aquarium, which can be clear on the bottom. Is it all right if I bring my website up? I don't know what my time constraints are.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you do saltwater fish stations?
No, because then that would poison the plants then.
Is that a bad thing?
Can be. showing it there,
So
but
does
not
this
here.
thing, does this thing run continuously or is
Drag
there
it,
a
Yeah.
monitor?
drag it over to your desktop and then use
Not tracking.
So you have to move the mouse on the screen. It's
dual.
extended desktop.
I can't see the, do you guys see a cursor anywhere? Oh, here.
There you go.
There you go.
Finish your URL then.
It's finished.
What is that?
Can't. Oh, there it is.
Does this pump run constantly, or is there a monitor in the water to measure concentration before it kicks on?
Yeah, there are different ways you can do it. My system, excuse me, my system just has a bell siphon in top, so once it fills up to a certain point, it's the water's then evacuated really quickly, and that enables you to grow plants that don't tolerate the roots being wet all the time. But you could also have it run continuously depending on which plants you grow. But as I mentioned, this is more of a vertical gardening setup. This is something for a school. So you can see down here is the aquarium, and then it's pumped up to the top and then just flows right back into the aquarium that way.
How big is that thing?
That's a 4x8.
Sorry?
4x8.
So essentially, that is a sheet of plywood.
Lost my cursor again.
Yeah, if you make that cabinet a little more attractive, you could plant an herb garden in there.
Definitely. That would be. As you can see, you could do it, you're pretty much only limited by your own imagination. And I do a lot of like system design for unconventional ones. But we've actually had a couple of schools that have expressed interest. Specifically, that wasn't a market that I initially thought of. But we're looking at doing a pilot program over at St. Patrick's here in Cedar Falls, so hopefully that'll work out.
That seems to me that needs to be a piece of furniture. I mean, it sounds silly, but
They do it on HGTV all the time.
That's a commercial system
there was a
there.
smaller version of that I can put in my kitchen.
What do you see as an ideal size if you were doing it in a
Yeah,
kitchen?
if I wanted to have an herb garden in my kitchen. Right now, I have to put a bunch of pots next to my sliding glass door so they get some sun.
Right.
And even at that, some herbs work better than others.
Absolutely.
Basil's 3 or 4 months then it's done.
Right.
Rosemary will last all year, but yeah. I mean, if there was. Yeah, be careful of that shit. No, seriously, take over your whole yard. Really?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If you were putting a system in your kitchen, do you think it would add flexibility by being something vertical, wall mounted like that, or
Yeah.
more of a, okay.
And I mean, it's plants, so it's.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, kind of the therapeutic sound of the water dripping.
And that's what I'm saying, it wouldn't have to be very big. I mean, and your price point would be fairly low and.
Does it add humidity to the room?
Yeah, absolutely,
At
and,
this time of year, that kind of.
right, helps with air quality as well, so another few benefits there.
How many plants can you fit in one of those systems, a full size?
In a full-size one, once again, it depends on what you're growing, but my stocking density is usually right around 1 per square foot for larger plants.
Okay. You said it's a 4x8?
Well, that large one for a school was a 4x8, but once again, I would appreciate some feedback, but our initial prototype, or what I've been working on, is a 4x4 square,
Okay.
4x4x3.
That's 16 plants. Pretty good. So where do you see a resident putting this?
Well, essentially, you could put it anywhere. You could put it in your living room. You could put it on a balcony if you're, in a more urban environment. It's basically, well, for that specific target market, it's for people that can't grow in their yard, et cetera. So yeah, you could put it in your garage, which is where my system was. You can put it in your living room, balcony, wherever you want. Bedroom, if you're into that kind of thing.
How much does it weigh?
Can be outside.
Yeah, it can be. No, it can be. Well, that's one of the only, I guess I should say, one concern is the weight. When you're looking at a 200-gallon system, obviously that weighs quite a bit, so you'd be limited on, older houses. You wouldn't want to put it right in the middle of your living room without putting a brace before or below it. But yeah, that is a valid point, or a valid concern. Any other questions?
If you could make that small enough to put into an apartment, you'd sell the crap out of that in New York City.
That was kind of the first target market we saw.
But, I mean, literally, those apartments aren't much bigger than 3 of these tables put together, so it has to be small enough that you just set up the counter. Because there's
That's a
all
good
kinds of
point.
foods out there that would do small stuff like that.
It's a good point. The initial thought was that we could make one system that's scalable, so you could use one standalone in a residential setting, but you could also scale it up as you grew. But I definitely agree that the space concern, it seems like the space is what's at a premium in a lot of the target markets we're looking at.
And making it, if it's in your living room, attractive.
Boston,
So we're looking at instead of just a plain brown plastic.
Absolutely.
Sitting there.
That was one of the feedbacks I got from previous presentations was that
That could add some margin there too.
yeah, everything that's out there, as you saw, was pretty hideous. Not too many, well, people, period, are going to let that come into their living room, but if we can make it look good, I completely agree. I think we could use that as a differentiator as well. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Can you breed fish in it too?
Can I what?
Like hatch more fish?
You could, but that's a lot more difficult. You wouldn't be able to do it in the system you're actively growing in. You would have to do it in a well, yeah, in theory you could. You would just have to drastically reduce your stocking density for that time. Anything else? Thank you very much for your time.
So, last question this morning for you is what can we do as a community to help you with Iowa Aquaponics?
There are several things. First thing just being that you sat here today and you learned about aquaponics. You can now talk to your friends about what it is and that people are out there trying to disrupt the food system and make it better. But also I really would like some help in critiquing my business plan. If there's anybody that's into that type of thing that I could give my business plan to, and you could give me some feedback. Those would probably be the biggest things at this stage.
Thank you very much, Soren.
Thank you.
So that's it for this.